Allah, there is no God but Allah. Allah is great.
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Assalamu alaikum rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Today we are looking at the series True Peace, the Secret of Life. And in this series we've been looking at various things that make up the Muslim community. That Islam is not just based on one point only, but it's made up of many facets, many petals, if you would. So we're looking into the world's fastest growing religion and the most sustainable belief system in the entire universe. And in this series we've been looking how Islam has a framework that holds it all together. And so far we've looked at the hope structure, which is in Islam, or the belief system, if you will. We've looked at the educational structure, how education has been something that is extremely important in Islam, that we gain not only a spiritual but also a secular education. Both of these need to work together as a cohesive whole. We've also looked at how Islam is made up of a spiritual structure, that feeding the soul is as important as feeding the stomach, that feeding the spirit man, or who we are, is just as important as feeding our physical bodies and going to gym and working out. We've also looked at how Islam has a structure that deals with morality, with a code of ethics, and how we deal with one another in our day-to-day lives. And last time, we looked at the human responsibility structure, how we as humans have responsibilities one to the other, how we need a life that is balanced, how that we don't go from one extreme to the other. In many societies, you will see that people will be so spiritually minded that they know earthly good. In other cultures that are so earthly minded that they know spiritually any good to anybody. So Islam has a balance that we need to have responsibility to our social welfares, our society, to the community, to nature, to the environment, but there needs to be the balance as well that we also need to be responsible to Allah, to all that He has given us, and be in a way a 50-50. There must not be this imbalance. And so we looked at that in our human rights structure. And today we are going to be looking, inshallah, at the family structure. And this is one of the areas in life which is, very, very, very important. If our family structure falls apart, we find that everything else is like a domino effect. It's like a house of cards that all falls down. Our family structure is so important that often it will affect our economic structure. It will affect our social structure. It will affect our religious structure. It will even affect our belief structure. So in a way, we've come towards the middle of the series, and if we get this wrong, everything that we've looked at before will come falling down, and everything that will come after will not be built. So we have to understand that the family structure is extremely important. And today we find that the family structure is the thing that is under attack the most, as we will look at, inshallah, during this episode today, inshallah. But we find that many of us believe that we don't need anybody. I am on my own. What are some of the things that people say? I am an island to myself. Some people say, I'm the master of my own destiny. Well, let's see if people truly are the masters of their own destiny, if they truly are an island unto themselves. If you were, you would not need an economic structure because you would have no need for any income or money. But we do need an economic structure. We do need an income. So by our very nature, we're not really free because we have needs to fulfill the requirements of our day-to-day lives. So we have a need to work. We have a need to fulfill our sexual desires. Otherwise, we would fulfill them in ways that could possibly harm us, that could possibly lead us into a dangerous territory. As we've seen in the revolution of free sex, and do what you like and do unto others as you like, and look what happened. We have the consequences. I'm not just talking about HIV and AIDS. I'm talking about other things that we've had a breakdown in society, a breakdown in morality, where people can move into your neighborhood and molest your children and no one will say a thing because they have rights. And so we find in this society that we live a breakdown because If we try to suppress our natural sexual tendencies, then we'll end up going into deviant things. We start doing things that are not permissible, even by the secular societies that we live in. So truly, if we think that we are totally free, then we will find ourselves going into depravity in those areas. We have the need for protection. We have the need for status. We have the need for socialization. In this world, we all need to be social beings. If we had to, by our free will, choose not to socialize with other people, how long do you think that would last? Soon we would break down and become frustrated. We would start again to do odd and strange things. I remember watching a film many, many years ago when I was still young about this man who was deserted on an island all by himself. And he was going crazy. I mean, as any of us would, being all by ourselves for so many years. And eventually a football, I'm sure you'll remember the film, but a football washes up onto the shore and he starts painting a face onto the football. And he talks to it and he has conversations with it. And one day the football disappears into the ocean and disappears. And he's standing on the shore crying and screaming to the football to come back. This is what isolation can do to you. Imagine if you're in a correctional service institution or a prison or a jail, and they want to pull you into right order. Perhaps you've been doing things wrong. Maybe you are involved with gang affiliation. Maybe you beat up one of the security guards. Maybe you beat up somebody. And so what they do is they put you in isolation. What's the purpose of isolation? To break you down as quickly as possible so that you will toe the line again. Nobody likes to be in isolation, so no man is an island. You are not the master of your own destiny. And if you believe that, then you're bought into the greatest lie that Shaitan has ever given you. We all need to be part of a social structure, even if you're in the prison system and you are watching this program and you're in a jail, you are part of a family structure. The people that you choose to be affiliated with, whether it be a good affiliation or a bad affiliation, it is your family. And those people are looking after you. They have your back. Look in your system for a Muslim community. Speak to the Muslim brothers there and see if you can change from the structure that you're in into the structure that you would prefer to be in. And no, it will not be easy for you to change that structure. It's difficult. Even when we marry into another family, it is very difficult for us. We have sister-in-laws and brother-in-laws and father-in-laws and mother-in-laws, and it can take years for those structures to work nicely together. But we need these structures. And in Islam, these structures are protected. We find it in the world today that most people, by the age of 19 or 20, if you're a woman, have undergone abortions. In fact, they have looked at certain capitalist countries which has an 81% abortion rate. 81% of people have gone through abortions. And this is because there is a breakdown in the family structure. There's a lack of communication. What is wrong with that mother or father speaking to the child and explaining the dangers, the pros and cons of pregnancy or unwanted pregnancies, and dealing with how that issue should be resolved? And we're finding that many, many people throughout the world have not been educated on having sexual relations before marriage. And then we find them going to other areas or going to other towns or going to other communities and having these abortions. There was an interview that I came across on the internet of a woman, and she was an adult film star. You know, these people who act in adult movies. And the interview was done, I'm just going to paraphrase it because the interview, I have it here, but it's a very long interview. And in this interview, they asked her, you know, if your daughter was to say to you one day, she wants to get involved in the same industry as you, what would you say to her? And this woman said, I would tie her up and I would lock her in a closet. A woman who's making millions out of the industry said, if my daughter came to me, I would tie her up and I'd lock her in a closet. It is the most difficult industry in the world to be in. Nobody deserves this life. It is not something that I would want anyone's daughter, let alone my own daughter, to go through. It's not something that any parent should choose for her child. And then the interviewer goes on to ask and says, so you would not advise any young woman to get involved in this industry? And she answers and says, not unless they have their heads screwed on incorrectly and they have no moral system in their life. My child, hey, I want my child to go to college and become a doctor. This is what she says. If it came from a Muslim mouth, people would say, you radicals, you crazy, you're living in the dark ages. Here is a woman who is in the industry, who has children. She says, not a chance do I want my children to go through this. I want them to get an education. I want my daughter to become a doctor. Today we see in society a total breakdown of the family structure. And yet many of us, we choose to look away. We have the responsibility of parents in Islam to look after our children, to be role models to these children, to be those people who are supposed to show our children the right way to live. Well, it's time for us to take a short break. When we get back from the break, we will continue, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Welcome back. We are talking about the family structure today, how to find true peace of mind. And we've looked at the issues that the family is dealing with today in our society, how many problems there are. There's a total destruction of the family system. The world is trying to destroy the family structure. We find in most countries in the world have between a 40 and a 70% divorce rate. That means you've got a 50-50 chance of having a successful marriage. More than 3 million abortions are committed every year in the Western world. This is not looking at other countries like India and places like that. We're talking about supposedly civilized countries. 3 million a year, over 3 million. This is the society that we have at the moment in the world. This is ridiculous that these figures are permitted to happen. We find that many women will not even get a husband, will not even have the opportunity to find a husband in this world today. We find that in society, many young women will have had a pregnancy aborted at one stage or the other, for whatever reason, whether it be through rape or whether it be through choice or whatever the reason. This is the condition of society today. So we have a serious problem. So we have a serious problem in the world. And Islam has the solution. That's the good news. We see these figures, we see these things falling apart throughout the world. The whole structure of society, the whole family structure is falling apart. Yet Islam has a solution. And if you're a non-Muslim and you're watching, you might think, well, if Islam has a solution, why does everyone not just climb aboard and follow what Islam is teaching? This is our point. Why don't you? Have a look at how we look at our parents. A Muslim shouldn't be sending their parents to an old age home. The parents should be looked after by their family. The children are told to respect the mother. We find that in the Muslim structure, if there are women who are sitting without husbands or unable to find a husband, that a man is permitted to have another wife. Not because it's for his ego, not because he thinks how great he is and look, I have a second wife. That's not the reason that they do that. It's because in certain societies there are more women than men. And so there is a vacuum. And so a man is permitted to have more than one wife, to make sure that that woman has safety, that her children have a father. This is the simplicity of Islam. And it's not out of pride or arrogance that the man takes on a second wife. Well, it should not be in the way that Muslims behave. If we live according to the Sharia, if we live according to what we are taught, then we know that there is a right motive why we take on more than one wife. You see, the very nature of a Muslim is that we are supposed to care and want to look after those people in need, especially those people who are inside our family structure. The first and most important structure that we have as Muslims is our family structure. If we get that right, then we can start working with the structures outside of that. If our children were to be asked, if we had to come to your house and knock on your door, and the whole Peace TV crew came there, 10 cameramen, lights, camera, action, and they stood there and they knocked on your door and they said, Mr. Whoever, we want to speak to your children. And your children were to sit where I am here now and say to them, what is your father like as a Muslim? What do you think they would say? And we had to ask your daughters, what is your mother like as a Muslim? What would they say? Would it be the same as what your community thinks you are? Would it be the same as your mom thinks you are? Would it be the same as your distant relatives think you are? Or is it the same person to your family, to your community, to the mosque, and to your extended family? You see, we need to be constant in what we do. And so the family structure is built in such a way in Islam to protect us. The emphasis on getting married, of getting that contract going between you and your wife is so important because it prevents adultery. It puts the lid on the fact that there will be illicit relationships taking place, that there will be children born without fathers or mothers. So the institution of marriage in Islam will protect society from this. It helps us to make sure that women are protected and that the man is protected because the woman is a helpmeet for the man. It allows significant relationships to grow within the family when there is a solid structure of marriage. Many people say, why should I get married? I mean, it's just a piece of paper after all. That's if you're looking at it from your own secular point of view. But a marriage contract, the nikah, is something that is very, very important in the life of a Muslim. It is not just a piece of paper. Yes, there is a contract that the man and the woman must sign. The contract involves the rules and stipulations that the woman has put in place and says, I want that, that, and that. And the man must agree with that, that, and that. They go backwards and forwards until they agree. And those things are stipulated in the marriage contract. It's not the same as perhaps you understand from Christianity. It's a different type of contract. But the most important contract is between you and your Creator. It is not to be entered lightly. There are some corrupt people who have twisted what Islam teaches about marriage and have somehow said that it's fine for you to have a 2-minute marriage or 1-hour marriage and nonsense like that. But in Islam, it is a very, very serious relationship. We see that in Islam, children are very, very important. They are our future offspring. You know, they're not only our biological offspring, but they are the future of Islam. And so it is our responsibility to treat them well, to treat our children with respect, so that they will become good, strong citizens of society. Oftentimes when we go to the mosque, we see that people are very strict with children. Some countries, they may be a bit too lenient with children in the mosque. But some countries are very, very strict. They don't allow the children to even say a word. In fact, they hardly even welcome in a mosque. Other countries, they let them run a bit loose. So you need to have this balance. But it's very, very important that children and the youth have a good feeling about the Muslim community, that they want to come to the mosque, that they want to get involved in activities of the mosque. The objective of everything that we do in the family is to come closer to Islam, to come closer to submission to the will of Allah. It's something that is so beautiful, the family structure, if it runs effectively. It's nothing better than seeing a family who prays together, a family that fasts together, a family that goes to the mosque together, a family that does dawah together, a family that attends and helps with functions that are in the community together. But there's nothing worse than when people have a broken family structure and the one son doesn't want to go to mosque, the daughter doesn't want to wear Islamic dress, the mother prays occasionally when she feels like it, the father fasts for the last 10 days of Ramadan just so that people can see that he's at the mosque. But generally there is that breakdown and it all falls apart. We need to repair it, and you can repair your relationships. You can repair your family relationship. And the first step to repairing your family relationship is to concentrate on the most important aspect of your family relationship, and that is to get Tawheed correct in your family. You may all have different versions of what you think Tawheed is. Maybe your mother has a different version of what Tawheed is to your dad. Maybe you have a different understanding of what Tawheed is to your next door neighbor. You all have to be on the same page. If you're not on the same page on who your Creator is, there will just be confusion and destruction. So you need to be on the same page on who Allah is. Second way to work on how to move forward in your family structure to repair the damages that you have is to establish regular prayer. You can start with it being once a day, everybody all together on the same time. Then add the second and third and fourth and fifth so that you're all praying regularly 5 times a day. The third thing that you need to get right is you need to have a family time, not independent reading of the Quran and independent reading of the Sunnah. You need to come together, sit around the dining room table, at least 15 minutes a day, at least once a day. You come and you share, have a little halaqah where you all sit together and you read a passage together. Come together as a family. This you can do independent reading, not a problem, but this is a family time. Every single time you call it a quiet time, where you all come together and you read a quiet time together and you speak and you discuss it. Even in your business place, this is what should be happening before you get into the day of business. Fourth thing is that you need to make sure that you are fasting on the prescribed days, perhaps even days that are not prescribed, and then you will find the family starting to come together. When you get that right, then you can move forward as a family. The family is the most important structure. However, if your family is destructive and is falling apart and is not repairable, and you've done everything that I've just said, and they still do not want to continue, you have to enforce more stricter rules. And this means not giving ultimatums. You know, some people give ultimatums. If you don't do this, then I'm going to kick you out the house. If you don't do this, I'm taking away your cell phone. That is not going to happen, because what happens if they call your bluff? What happens if your son or your daughter calls your bluff and say, well, fine, take away my cell phone? Then what do you have? You have to have much stricter things in place than a simple threat. You have to remember that you have to keep your word. So if you make a threat, you have to follow through on it. So you have to have something far more concrete than just an idle threat as if you do this, I'm going to take away your gym fees or whatever it might be that they enjoy doing. It has to be something far more serious and far more solid. Remember, we want to have our family structure sound so that our spiritual structure can be sound, so that our community structure can be sound. Everything builds one on top of the other. Islam, it's a very, very simple, practical religion. If you are a single person who's sitting at home and your family structure is really falling apart, pray to Allah, speak to Allah, ask Allah to find you a good husband. Maybe you're a single man, pray to Allah that He finds you a good wife, good husband and wife for each other. This is what we need. This is how we have a strong family life. Well, that's all the time we have for this program today. Inshallah, we meet again next time, same place. So for me, Areeb Islam, until next time, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Subhanallah, walhamdulillah, wa la ilaha illallah, wallahu akbar, wa la hawla wa la quwwata illa billahi al-aliyyil azim. Glory be to Allah, all praise to Allah. There is no God but Allah. Allah is great. All power and might belong to Allah, the Most High.